You're listening to the B&H Photography Podcast. For over 40 years, B&H has been the professional source for photography, video, audio, and more. For your favorite gear, news, and reviews, visit us at bnh.com or download the B&H app to your iPhone or Android device. Now here's your host, Alan Weitz.
Greetings and welcome to the B&H Photography Podcast. Today's show is a special one. We're recording at the Mann Gallery on West 26th Street, Manhattan, and speaking with Australian landscape photographer Murray Fredericks. Murray's landscapes can be found in the collections of numerous museums, galleries, and private collections, including the Museum of Sydney and the Elton John Collection. And his very first solo show opens in the United States at the Mann Gallery and runs from February 1st, 2018 through April 7th, 2018. Don't miss it. Also joining us is Mann, as in Mann Gallery. As we walk through the gallery, we're going to be chatting with Robert and Murray about this remarkable series of photographs called Vanity. Upon first glance, it's clear that these photos are like no other photographs, and Fredericks possesses a visual signature that sets him apart from other photographers in the genre. I encourage you to go to murrayfredericks.com.au or robertmann.com or our landing page at B&H to see the photographs we're talking about as you listen to this podcast. And stay with us toward the end of the show when we will be speaking with Hillary and Tim, the two winners of our recent B&H Photography Canon 5D Mark IV sweepstakes. Now join John Harris and I as we speak with Mann and Murray Fredericks. Murray, thank you so much for inviting us down today. For the past few weeks, we've been looking at these pictures on computer monitors, and to be here at the gallery and look at large-scale prints is really, really impressive, and there's a lot of topics we could be talking about. You advise people to view your photographs not as records of a geographic location, but as a record of the space that happens to be occupying that landscape at that particular moment in time. Can you expand a bit on that?
Yeah, sure. Look, I think landscape photography really started with the pictorial, and it was very much enough for a landscape photograph to simply be a record of the scene. But photography's got to be more than that now. We've definitely moved beyond that. And for me, a successful landscape photograph has to be something that does something to the mind. It has to move beyond the landscape itself and beyond a straight, what I call there, a geographic representation. So it's a big question that I've been asking myself. Why have I been drawn to these sites and to this kind of imagery for now almost 20 years? And I keep coming up with the idea that I'm chasing something. And for many years, I wasn't sure what that was. And I think with this series, I've started to realize that what I've been chasing is a sensation or an experience or a feeling, something that happened to me when I was in a place like this without a camera. And I had this sensation walking off onto a salt plane in the middle of the night. And I just stood there. I stood in the emptiness. There was no wind. It was dead quiet. And I had this strange sensation, very beautiful sensation, that somehow the physical boundaries of my body were dissolving into this space that I was standing within. And with that sensation came this huge sense of release. And I think since then, that's been the driving force. The question becomes, can that sensation be somehow represented in an image?
It's very subtle, and you've captured it. And I think a lot of it has to do with the time of day, obviously. But yeah, it's a photograph of an atmosphere. It's almost spiritual.
I've been going to Lake Eyre now since 2003. And originally I'd live in the middle of the lake for 5 weeks at the time. And what I was looking for was nothing. You know, the original question I asked myself was, what does nothing look like? Can nothing be represented in an image using the camera in a photograph? Of course it can't, because there's so much there. And that was the joy of finding that. But it's this search for nothing, where there shouldn't be anything. And I went there once and went there twice, went there 3 times, and the more I went, the more I realised there was to photograph. And I keep trying to shake this place off, but it's now become almost a riddle that I'm trying to answer. when am I going to stop photographing nothing? I mean, the last time I went there with some mirrors, which just came up out of and that's what we're looking at right now. And I love that this stuff just keeps emanating out of this void, out of this emptiness.
Do these prints appear too small to you based on the scale of what you've been seriously, I mean, these are really large prints. They're 40 by 60, maybe somewhere in that range? I'm just guessing, okay? But based on what you're describing, these are actually little tiny contact prints.
I've had other shows where there's other images in the SALT series that are panoramic images, and they've been exhibited at 5 metres by 120. We had a show in London at Hamilton's Gallery, and the whole show was essentially 2 images, 2 5-metre images opposite each other. So we've experimented with that. But there are practical limitations in the medium. And I tried to get around those practical limitations once with a huge video installation we did in Sydney, in a huge hall. And there we had a 5-metre by 7-metre transparent screen in a dark room. And it was fantastic. So, look, playing with scale, I think that's the question you raise. What is the right scale? I think in this space, these 1 metre 20 by...
the space, they're perfect.
Yeah.
In a certain sense, I want to see them even bigger.
Sure.
Regarding this idea of trying to represent nothingness or the space itself, or the feeling that you had, when did the idea of the mirrors come in? And did you try other avenues to find that feeling, to represent that feeling? And
in 2016, when this series was shot, I was done with Lake Eyre. I was feeling like a typecast actor. It was time to walk away. And I came up with this new idea. I was going somewhere else. It was a bunch of night work, and luckily it was the same techniques. I had the same cameras. I had my car loaded. I was ready to go. And it rained. And it rained heavily. Now, rain in the Australian desert can be a rare thing. It can go for 8-9 years without proper rain. So it rained just as I was going off to do something else. And I thought, you know what? Lake Eyre's now perfect. So I may as well go there. Sooner or later, there's going to be a book. I'm just going to go there. I'm not going to waste my time, and I'm going to add to the series that we've already got. And it'll be fun. I'll just treat it as a bit of fun. And I was sitting with a friend having a coffee who was a graphic designer. And he said, what are you going to see there? And I said, well, actually, the reason I'm going back is when there's been just this much rain, not too much, not too little, you end up with a 10-kilometre wide puddle that acts like a giant mirror. And that word mirror stuck in my head. And by lunch, I'd ordered 2 mirrors from a set builder to be made because it just never went away. And I thought, put a mirror in the mirror. Now, what I originally thought I'd be doing was working with this idea of infinity. And I got 2 mirrors, dragged them out into the middle of the lake, and I reflected them into each other, and I was doing that hall of mirror thing. And as soon as I took the first shot and looked down the lens, I realised it was not going to work. It was a gimmick. So I moved 1 mirror away, and the angle of the mirror that we see now here was where it was sitting, and I looked through the lens, and there was something in the geometry, and I noticed that at that angle, the physicality of the mirror as an object disappeared, and it just left light and colour. And that was when the penny dropped. So I walked away, 7 kilometres, went back, had dinner or breakfast or whatever the time of day it was, and then started working on that.
Well, I think it's important to note that Murray had to drag all of this gear through, about 2 kilometers of mud before you got to this spot? I mean, it's kind of funny to watch it. There's some great videos of you trekking across this barren landscape of salty muck with all this gear. I will never complain again about climbing a hill with a bag of cameras on my shoulder ever again.
Are these all relatively the same spot within the lake, or do you?
So there was 2 trips. We were very lucky with the rain. It happened twice. Once in winter, June in Australia, and then again at the start of summer in October. So I actually use NASA satellite imagery, which is available 1 hour after it's taken every day. So it's free. I get online and I can see where the puddle is in this giant void. So the lake itself is 70 kilometres by 150 kilometres long. Now, the salt and everything exists in about one, maybe 20 kilometre by 50 kilometre area, but the water gets blown around like a tide. So I use that NASA imagery to see where the puddle is. And it's look, the advantage of coming back to a subject like this over 15 years is that I know where the access points are. I get a lot of help from I've never seen another person out there. It's on private land. To the lake itself is public, but access is the problem. And I know how to access the various points where the water is, and then out I go on the bike or with a trolley and drag the stuff out into the centre.
Now, you started this project using an 8x10 camera, which is pretty serious. That's a lot of detail, and it's a perfect vehicle for capturing this sort of imagery because the subtleties in here are amazing. And by the way, looking at the prints, there's so much more going on than you ever see on a computer monitor, even the best monitors. The detail, they're sensual. They go really, really far. They're much deeper than the image you see on the screen. Now, you started with an 8x10 camera and you ended with a digital camera, a medium format camera, an Alpha with a digital back on it. Now, they're both extreme high quality, yet they're two very different vehicles to work from. What are the pros and cons of each of them? And I imagine there are pros and cons.
Look, one of the great things, I think it's great, that happened over the span of this project is that we as photographers went through this whole technological change. You can read, it's an interesting point you raise. You can read a history of photography through its technological changes. Mm-hmm. Who had access to it, what the imagery looked like, what imagery became available over time. And in some ways, I think I was very lucky to straddle this whole change. So one of the advantages of going back to this place, which was just a flat white pan and a horizon and a sky, was that with just a single medium, just the 810 originally, it got to a point after about 6 or 7 years where I was looking through the viewfinder and going, done it. There's nothing, and I thought that's the end of the show. That's where this project ends. And then I started thinking, it's space that I'm trying to convey, or more importantly, this emotional sense of space, the intersection of the human mind and space. That's what I'm really trying to get across. Right. So I started to think, well, what about what's happening outside of the frame? What's happening to the left and right of the traditional 810 frame? And the very first thing I did, it cost an absolute fortune, but I tried to do panoramic stitches with 810. Now, we all know how much that cost. That's to a young artist, which I was at the time, that was prohibitively expensive. And then suddenly digital came along. Now, the early DSLR digital did not have the quality at this scale to hold a wall, so it was no good. But then medium format digital came along and suddenly I could work panoramically. So the project then naturally progressed through a technical change. I was able to start capturing imagery that I wasn't able to get before. So the technical, the process is not the point. The process allowed more imagery, different imagery to be captured. And I think that's one of the things about photography is where the technical and we have to work with both of them. Right. The photographer melds the technical reality with the underlying conceptual, creative force.
Are you ever going back to 810?
So I still work on 810.
Okay.
Because the one thing digital's not doing yet are long exposures. So there was a component to this mirror series which involves 5 to 7 hour nighttime exposures. And digital's still not doing that. So some of the listeners are probably going to have techniques of doing, I've seen them online. Yeah. I know there are techniques of stitching together star trails all the way along. What I'm interested in doing is leaving the shutter open for 7 hours. And as far as I'm aware, there's still not great technology at this scale, certainly on medium format, that will give us prints of this scale without noise inhibiting the viewer's experience.
Okay, let's take a walk over to this one photograph, one of the pictures you have here with star trails on it.
So this particular image we're looking at was somewhere between a 5 to 7 hour exposure. And as far as I'm aware, there's still no higher quality way to do this than on film, and particularly than on 810 film. So during this whole phase of shooting with the mirrors, which was 2-month-long shoots in June and October of 2016, every single night we were out there that wasn't cloudy, I had 2 810 cameras and a 4.5 running as a backup.
I'm sorry, the idea of having a 4x5 as a small format backup, I love. That's great. I like that. That's good. Thank you.
So out of all those images that were taken every night, there's 3 that actually worked, and it's a real effort in visualization, trying to visualize which way the arcs are going to go. I mean, one of the things with digital is you get to see straight away, but with this old in inverted commas technology, you're still working on that wonderful skill of pre-visualization, and this was technically challenging, like trying to work out which way the stars would arc with the camera faced that way, and then which way they'd appear inverted in the mirror. And I think in the end I could actually visualise in 360 degrees which way the stars would arc, and then I could get a compass out or a GPS these days, look at the direction that was facing, and then visualise the way they're going to arc in the mirror. And most of them just didn't work, but we got 3. But this was 98% of it. I mean, it's an effort thing as well. This nighttime work was 98% of the effort, I reckon. Getting the gear out there, getting the tripods, the 810, the slides, cleaning it all in the salt, all that kind of stuff.
How deep is the water that you're standing in?
So the water is say 2 to 3 inches to a foot, to 12 inches deep.
So that in itself is challenging. You're spending all that time in wetness. How do you keep your equipment from being corrupted?
Yeah.
This water is 10 times saltier than seawater because of the concentration. It's a completely saturated salt solution. There's no limit to the amount of salt it'll dissolve until it's saturated, because there's 1.5 meters of salt on the ground that gets soaked up into the water.
If you fall in that, you're pickled.
You do
essentially pickled.
You do fall. I'm sure there are photographers listening who understand this. We all fall, and the camera we all know how to fall with our bodies and keep the camera dry.
Yes.
You know, that happens a lot out there.
Now, even just casual contact with this, because again, this is highly corrosive. Everything around you, even just the air probably has a lot of sodium molecules in it. Did you have any mechanical failures or any kind of technical issues that you had to deal with?
With everything except the cameras. So the phrase that I kept in my head is optical pathway. That's all that matters. Keep the optical pathway clean. Everything else is disposable, unfortunately. But look, on a practical level, I dragged a picnic table that I bought at the supermarket with the mirrors. I tied it on the back of the mirrors. That whole thing went on, and we set up this picnic table. I used it again on the camping trip I went on with my family over summer. It's still going. It's a good picnic table. Most high-tech.
Calcium-tipped legs on it. It's real.
Sometimes the cheapest things last for years. No, we had that. The other technical issue we had with the salt, the main one, was the mirrors, keeping the mirrors clean. So that's what the problem was. The mirrors had to be perfect.
Oh, that's another interesting thing, is that when you're looking at these photographs online, again, even on a really good monitor, you don't pick up, the mirrors seem to just be reflecting general images, but when you're looking at them here in print form, a lot of the textures on the mirror are really fascinating as reflections of what's going on, and you don't get that otherwise. It's a terrific experience. You describe yourself not as a photographer, but as a visual artist, and I get that. And these photographs, when I look at them, I think illustration. And some of the pictures that you have here, I'd say about half of them in general, remind me so much of airbrush renderings, and I'm not saying that in a derogatory way, but if you just stand here and look at some of the sharp edges, especially with the mirrors where you have dark blue going into light blue with the edges of the reflection and the real thing, it looks like an airbrush rendering by a very good airbrush technician.
So what you're raising is a really, really important point. Photography is so bound up in truth. It's so bound up in the assumption of truth. And I think everyone wants to know, has it been photoshopped or has it been manipulated? Has my understanding, my belief in the truth of photography, and I'm not saying it is, I mean, that's years and years of PhD and masters and studying about the truth of photography. But whether we believe photography is true or not, the average viewer has this underlying assumption about the truth of photography. We want to know if this is real. To me, what you just said is probably one of the best compliments you could give me, and we being myself and the printer, more than any other series that I've done, so careful to only use the digital part of the process in the creation of the final print, in the balancing of the tones, the contrast, the thing, the way we would have printed in the darkroom in the first place.
Right.
The reason I brought a friend out and created the behind-the-scenes video that I think you've seen and that's online if the viewers want to go and have a look at.
Highly recommendable.
Is that I wanted people to understand that these things were not created at my desk, that they're not graphic design, they're not illustrations. And you can actually go in there and see the live video, the video that was captured while we were doing this, and hopefully recognise some of the same qualities. I think some of the airbrushing sense that you may feel is long exposure. So occasionally when there was chop on the water, as in there was a bit too much wind, then I'd throw on an ND filter and push the exposure out to 20 or 30 seconds to smooth that out. So that's also going to give that...
That's part of the atmospheric effect. And also the fact that you're photographing, at dawn and dusk where you get that pastel-y Miami look to things.
Yes, absolutely.
So that also adds to the airbrush effect.
One of the challenges for me was, I guess, not making it look too pictorial. It comes out very colourful. It comes out very colourful in a thing, but these colours are actually very restrained. It's just that they're very pure.
Yeah.
So the way we perceive the colours comes in very, as if they're very strong. But if you were actually to sit there and measure those blues and those reds and everything else, on a monitor, they're probably a quarter of the saturation that you'd see in a normal commercial image. It's just that they're so clean. The colours are so clean. One of the reasons all these images were shot pretty much within 20 minutes of the sunset, and then 20 minutes or 20 minutes up to sunrise, was because any direct light on the mirror revealed its dimensionality. It revealed the glass as object.
Ah, okay.
So direct sun or direct moonlight. So I did a lot of these nighttime images that we're looking at here with the star trails. I did quite a few with moonlight as well. They all got thrown away because any point source of light revealed the edges of the glass. But in the soft light, in the blue hour, or the blue hour and golden hour, just shooting there, it just became a plane of light. And then light became the material, light became the experience itself. And that's what I'm aiming for with these images.
We can do a little bit of a segue, Rob, and I want to ask you a question. You represent some of the finest photographers we know, living and not living. And amongst these photographers are other landscape shooters, obviously. How do you compare Murray's work to others? What made his work stand out to you? Because again, you see a lot of pictures day in and day out, and I imagine it takes something to make your eyebrows go up.
Murray's work I found transporting right from the get-go. It got me out of my head. And you're right, I've worked with many photographers, even one or two that you could say have come close to doing something like this in their work. I'm thinking Richard Misrak off the top of my head.
Okay.
But Murray's work straddled a new line for me. It transported me. There's a surrealness to the images. There is this quietness about them that gets me out of my head. It turns the noise down completely, and there's plenty of noise right now in all our lives, more than ever before. And maybe it was about the timing with that as well. But I experienced landscape in a whole new way with this Vanity series that Murray has done. It's something that I've never felt in any of the other artists and the other works that I've had before. And I think it's I call it a sort of surrealistic experience that the mirrors offer. These objects placed in a very quiet, calm landscape, they have a transporting effect on me and hopefully on other viewers that no other object that I have ever seen in a landscape, either that was there organically or was placed in there by the artist, has ever done before. So, I mean, for me, it was a fabulous fit, and a sort of continuing a dialogue about landscape that I've always been interested in since I began with Ansel Adams, back in the 1970s, and sort of morphed into becoming involved with many landscape artists, including the new topographic artists and people who were looking at the landscape in a very kind of cluttered way. This is sort of another essential element to my progression in just looking at pictures and wanting to show pictures about the planet we live on that has a whole new voice.
Maybe you can talk a little bit about the decision-making process to bring in a newer artist, in your case for the gallery, Michael Kenna, Chip Hooper, other, landscape artists whose work you might describe as minimalist. But was there any kind of decision to say, well, this is different from us? They're big, they're colorful, they're minimalist. Was it a risky decision, or does that, this is perfect for us?
Well, actually, you mentioned Michael Kenna, and he is, I believe, our segue, right? I mean, he was he made the introduction. And he's a dear old friend who I've worked with for probably over 30 years by now. But
Can I have to say,
yeah.
Michael Kenna, when I was a student, was an absolute hero. One of his early books that he released, and it had the nighttime work with he turned these subjects, the chimney stacks and the power station work and kids' playgrounds and things like that. He turned the landscape into something that went far beyond the literal subject matter, and that's where we started this conversation in the first place.
Yeah.
I got invited to a photo festival in Colombia earlier this year, and I shared a taxi ride from the airport with a guy called Michael. And it wasn't, and he was a lovely guy, and he was English and Australian humour, and we bantered all the way to the airport. And I wonder who this guy is and everything. And when he signed Michael Kenna at the hotel, I almost fell over. I'd met my child. I'd met my hero, and
you had no idea.
No idea who it was. No. So So that's where that came from.
He was on our show about a year and a half ago. He's a wonderful guest, and we all love his work. He's terrific. It's good.
The process of making the decision to take someone is not as complicated as it might seem. It's really, I hate to say, it's just simply sometimes something you feel in your gut. There is the concern that you're not taking on an artist whose work overlaps with another artist that you have, that it's adding something new and different to the program, but it's also not so far out in left field that it's going to be like the strange, stepchild. So it has to be like a good fit for the family, and there was no question right from the beginning that Murray's work was going to be a good fit. And as I said earlier, that there was something new and different about the way he was looking at the landscape, and it seemed like an absolutely essential new voice for the gallery to have, and to continue our dialogue with the public. But for me, it was so visceral. It was just something I felt right away from looking at the pictures. And mind you, that was on the digital screen, where you cannot possibly get a true sense of what these pictures can do to you, how they can stir you up. I mean, the screen flattens it, and anyone listening to this, as you had said earlier, they really need to experience these prints in person. They just do not translate their magic to a computer screen.
Yeah, they look awesome on a good screen. They look well beyond description here.
Yes.
I mean, you just get stuck. You stand and you just stare.
They do.
They're mesmerizing.
Yes.
They really are.
Can I jump in there about this? It's a different medium. This, you know,
It is.
It's a completely different medium, and it condenses colour. I actually had experience early in my career, with the Salt series, this series before I introduced the mirror. And I'd go and see gallerists trying to get shows, and you wouldn't even get through the door. They'd reject. And there was one gallerist I saw years later, showed them exactly the same work but brought prints. And they said, "Oh, your work's really improved." It was the same work, you know. So yeah, I think, look, some work works. Some images work on screen. Some images work in the gallery. Some work in a book. That's the role of the artist and the photographer is to find the best medium or mediums.
Speaking of mediums, just a question for you. What printer are you using and what paper surface is this?
So this is a Hahnemühle photo rag. Yeah, I love it. I mean, when this was first released, I remember it was really liberating being able to print on this, you know, what was essentially 16th century technology with a film on the front that accepted modern pigment inks.
Yeah.
You know, and it just does something. It softens the gradations and the colours, but keeps that photo reality there.
And the printer?
Well, I know you don't mean. I know you're asking about the technology, but the printer.
The printer. I'm assuming this is inkjet.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah. It's an Epson printer, but more importantly, it's the person that I'm working with, the person at the controls. I work with a guy called Warren Macris in Australia, and he is, you know, I call him the Zen master. He gets inside your head. He doesn't bring anything to the process other than wanting to get your vision out onto the paper. That's much more important than whether it was inkjet or pigment or, you know.
Points taken.
Were the decisions on the size of the print and the type of paper and even the way they are mounted in the glass, was that something that the decisions had been made prior to the gallery show, or were they made specifically for this gallery show? And was there a collaboration at all, or did you just say?
These are part of a series, the whole Salt series. There's a point where materials are freely available, and then it becomes oversized, and then you get into problems and all that kind of stuff where you've got to bring in joins in the imagery. So very early on in the 810 part of the work, say 2005 to 2009, a 120 high by 150 wide became a fairly standard size. Because it was a series, I wanted uniformity, so I picked that size. The panoramas have generally been 120 high, so that when they sit in a gallery, it doesn't upset the visual flow as well. So yeah, those sizes are largely predetermined, and the maximum sizes were also worked back from the paper sizes that were available at the time. So all that's taken into consideration, and you end up with a happy.
And can you speak a little bit about the decision on the images that you chose? Are there others available? Maybe even.
I would say it was a collaboration. We wanted to have a nice cross-section, let's say, of what these pictures can convey, and, you know, in terms of the different palettes, and then one of the star trails, pictures that are lighter, darker. So yeah, we wanted to carefully pick a nice cross-section that gave a good overview, and also realizing the limits to what the space can hold, and also how strong and you know, each piece is and how much space it needs to command around itself. This work has been shown previously. We're not the first gallery, although it's the first time in the United States. And so there are editions, and some of the works have been shown in Australia, they've been shown in the UK. And so we also took that into consideration, where the editions may have been already partially sold or nearly sold out. We wanted to introduce the work to the American market, where they were still at the early stage of the edition.
And is there a book in the future, or something?
It's back to this thing about being typecast in the Salt series. The day the Salt series is finished, there's going to be a book, but I keep adding chapters to the book.
So you really consider this as part of the whole Salt series, with the vanity aspect of it, the mirror?
Absolutely. I look at this and say, there's no way I could have got to this point without the 15 years work that came before it.
And one question, you discussed or mentioned reflections off the mirror and the way that changed, the way the mirror fits within within the image itself. How would you say, how many failures, if that's not the right word to use, but how many images? Okay, well then, how many failures would you say you had, and how many images did you shoot during one session compared to what turned out to be images you liked?
That question is a great question, and I think it leads to the question of process when I'm shooting. And when I'm shooting, I'm really careful to divorce as much, even though it's an emotional end that I'm trying to get to, I'm trying to divorce my emotional experience at the time that I'm shooting. I try to stay very dry and methodical. There are moments when I'm involved and there are moments when I'm not, but often it's so, you're so tired. These are these lovely, beautiful things now hanging in a gallery in New York, but really when you're shooting, it's often you're tired, hot, cold, something covered in salt, you want to eat, and it just becomes this methodical, what I call data collection. You know, that's an intensely dry term that I put into my head to divorce my emotion from the process while I'm shooting. So I'm still going, like there's still a part of the brain that's going, the shot's there, that looks incredible. I'm open to surprises and changes and everything else. But the reason I do that is it gets rid of the preconceptions. I think one of the struggles with someone working with any landscape photographer who's working with found material is you bring your preconceptions to it, and your preconceptions can blind you to what's actually there. So that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to shut that part down, collect the data, and then bring the emotion back in when I'm assessing the data at the end. So at the time, they're not really successes or failures. It's just data collection. And then like making a film, the true meaning comes out in the editing process. You know, that's when you find out what you've done.
How do you compare that feeling of data collection and that, let's say, the game face, that working mode, to the feelings that you discussed earlier, where you're just in the space and everything else is dissolving around you?
Yeah.
How do you bring those two together to have a coherent idea?
Funnily enough, those experiences happen either side of the shooting phase. I mean, they're momentary things. One of the most powerful experiences I had out there was early in the process. I was a poor student when I started this work. I took a loan to get the 810. GPS technology back then was beyond what I could afford. Nowadays, everyone has a GPS. I was on a compass, and I didn't used to camp in the middle of the lake right at the start. So I'd walk in and out, and I started doing night work. And I had to go out on every time the moon rose or set, and I had to go out an hour after sunset and an hour before dawn. And it was horrible. I mean, over 3 weeks of that one particular trip, I was just in and out, wasn't sleeping. It was probably 4 or 5 hours of travel a night on the bike. One night, I left the compass behind. And I didn't realise until I got out to the camera and then had to turn around and go back. Now, this place is flat. There are no landmarks. There's absolutely no...
360 degree of horizon, right?
Yep. And I had an hour's ride back to go, and I had nothing, no compass with me. So I remember in the southern sky, southern hemisphere, we've got the Southern Cross, and there's a way that if you go 5 times the pointer's distance and drop it straight down to the horizon, that's due south. So I did that, right? I measured, I knew that was south. I knew that the camp was slightly left of south. So I went dead south until I got off the lake and then came all the way back around. Now I had no light, no navigation, nothing, and I was walking completely alone in silence. There was no wind. And I should have felt fear. But in that moment, I felt so relaxed, and I felt such a part of the sky, the ground, and the whole experience. And I remember thinking, whatever I'm feeling now is way more important than the photography. So it's those feelings, it's those sensations that happen around the photography that then guide the whole process, if you like. It forms the underlying motivation. And then the rest is work. You know, you're not in that emotional state the whole time. You go crazy. You can't live there. They're just moments, but they're powerful moments. They serve as beacons. They serve as guiding lights. That's how the work ends up looking like it does now. But the rest is work.
Were you tethered? Were you shooting tethered at all when you were shooting digital? Nothing. So you didn't see any images until you went back home and took...
The images now come... Well, you take the shot and it comes back up on the screen.
There is a screen on that.
There's a screen on the back of...
And what was the digital back?
phase one. Yeah. There's a couple of different phase ones. Yeah.
Question I've been, while doing homework to familiarize ourselves, I stumbled upon First Footprints, which is like 26, 28-minute long time-lapse video. It's as mind-boggling and dazzling as your still work, and it's totally different. And we were talking a little bit earlier, you're only able to shoot 3 days a month for a short period of time at night during half moon, and it's the most unearthly landscape video I've ever seen in my life. Can you talk a little bit about that?
So First Footprints is a documentary series.
Okay.
There was, which I was on as the time-lapse DP. There was only 3 people involved in the production, and it was basically it was a 4-part series on the prehistory of Australia, the peopling of Australia. So from 60,000 years when the first people came across from Asia until Captain Cook turned up. And they told the history of Australia through elders' oral stories, rock art carvings, and archaeologists and scientific evidence. Most of the archaeological information, the rock art, the carvings and everything, most of it had never been recorded before. And because it was so subtle, it had to be shot by moonlight with a black sky around it so that you could actually get enough contrast into the, into these engravings, some of which were 40,000 years old.
What's interesting is that when looking at this, you think you're looking at daylight, but the stars are in the sky, and that's what totally confused me. And it was really just a balance of half moon is just the right enough illumination of a time lapse. It appears to be daylight, but it's not.
Yeah. So the same thing happens in film photography. It's the same equation in still photography. I mean, time-lapse photography time-lapse videography is much better suited to still photographers than to videographers.
Because well, this is essentially right here. This time-lapse at night here is a time-lapse movie, but in one frame, summed up. That's really all it is.
And look, thinking this way, the whole lighting, every lighting decision is made around moon phase. Either no moon or just the right amount of moon to balance the landscape. As soon as you get up to half moon, it's, as you said, Alan, it starts to look like daytime. The stars are still there. As soon as you get a fraction over half moon, the stars start disappearing altogether. Full moon, you can only see a couple of planets in the sky.
You really work within thin slivers of time in many, many ways. I have one more question if you want, okay? And that is that you started off as a photographer with zero training as a photographer, from what I understand.
Yep.
And then you said, I'm going back to school, and you've since got 2 degrees in photography.
Yep.
Has it changed you at all, the way you approach photography?
Absolutely. Yeah. So essentially self-taught, did the physics of optics in science at high school, which was great grounding, but never got trained as a photographer. I did apprenticeships, which I think is still the best way to learn.
Sure.
And then when I'd started exhibiting, I think we were in the height of, in Australian art anyway, we're in the height of postmodernism. And I was getting you start to visit exhibitions and I'd read these room notes that were just impenetrable. And it really frustrated me that I had no idea what this language was that I was reading. And I thought, I've got to go to school. I've got to get a handle on this and understand it. Or at the time, I thought this is what I thought at the time. I don't agree with it now. I thought I wouldn't be taken seriously. So off I went to school. Now, I'm not going to come down on the language of contemporary art. That's not my place. The positive stuff that I pulled out of school was learning the history of my medium, and that had more effect overnight on what I was shooting than anything else. So at the time, I was shooting zone system, Ansel Adams, black and white, medium format, 4:5, and it was great formative work. And I was doing an apprenticeship with someone who revered that school and was exhibiting that school. But I suddenly realised that people like Paul Strand were avant-garde at the turn of the century. You know, that kind of work that's when it was new and people were interested in it. And I started to think that what I was involved with at the time was maybe a fetish, you know, like that's where it had gone to historically. And I literally stopped. And I fell in love with a bunch of American photographers actually, who were working on 810 and working with colour negative. We worked with transparency in Australia. No one worked with colour neg anyway. And it just jumped me forward. And the very first series, I stopped doing the literal black and white landscapes, and I just suddenly went, what am I interested in? What's my central core? What's my concept? And you're now looking at it 17 years later on the wall.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, for whatever it's worth, when John suggested doing a show on you, my first question was, did he go to college? Because if he didn't, I'm not interested.
So it's paid off. It's paid off.
Definitely has. Definitely has.
Any of the American photographers? Can you mention any names?
Absolutely. I mean, Stephen Shaw, absolute hero, local hero. You know, I can't wait to get to MoMA and see his show. I didn't get there yesterday. Mizrak, funnily enough, I came across his work when I was already, shooting this stuff. But I obviously just kindred spirit, right there. Also, at the same time, there were the American photographers. The Dusseldorf School is still the school. You know, the Beckers.
Yes. Oh, I love their work.
I mean, the Beckers formed the basis for me taking this serial approach that I've got now. I mean, my work doesn't look anything like their work, but I just fell in love with what they'd done with their whole career, the way they took this same image in the same light and just slightly altered the subject again and again. And it's not about the gas tanks, although they might say it was. To me, it was about something. Once again, it was about more than that. And it came alive across the series. And that's why, Alan, when you asked me, which images do we want to start with, I was like, look, it's the whole lot. I can't just narrow it down to one particular image because the thing comes alive as a series. It wasn't until I saw the Becker's work and then threw away everything that wasn't serialised that this whole SALT series started coming to life.
Gotcha. This has been a really, really informative hour or so, and want to thank both of you so much for having us over to see the show. Again, the show opens up at the Robert Mann Gallery and tonight, which is February 1st, and runs through April 7th, 2018. If you're in the New York area, come on down to West 26th Street and take a look at it. The pictures are magnificent. There's a lot of great work that goes through this gallery. Robert Mann, thank you so much for hosting us. And Murray Fredericks, thank you so much for giving us a tour of your work.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity, guys. Thank you.
And Murray, if people want to see more of your work, they should go to where?
murrayfredericks.com.au.
Okay. And also Robert Mann Gallery to see.
Robert Mann Gallery or robertmann.com.
All right. And that's to see Murray's work as well as a lot of other very good photographers.
All right, coming up next, we're going to be speaking with Hillary Dunning and Tim Couch, the two winners of our Canon Sweepstakes giveaway. Stay tuned.
We hope you're enjoying this edition of the B&H Photography Podcast. Send us a tweet at BHPhotoVideo, hashtag BHPhotoPodcast.
Okay, we are now here with Hillary Dunning of Chambersburg, Pennsylvania, and Hillary is the winner of the Canon EOS 80D with a 50mm 1.8 lens. Congrats, Hillary.
Thank you. I'm so excited, so excited. So thank you.
So what was your feeling when you found out that you were the winner?
Disbelief. I basically dropped my phone. I was just like, because I had seen it on Facebook as the announcement. So that I was just like, what? This isn't real.
Oh, so that's, oh, wow. So you saw it on Facebook. That's cool. That's really interesting. Okay.
And do you know B&H prior? Do you follow B&H? And how about the podcast? And it's
I
okay
do
to be
follow
honest.
B&H.
Uh-huh.
I follow it on social media more so than the podcast. So I was excited when I heard that you guys do have a podcast, and found out through the contest and started listening, and I plan to continue to listen, which is really cool.
Where's Chambersburg, by? I'm pretty familiar with Pennsylvania. Where are you located? Where's that?
It is south of Harrisburg.
Ah, okay. All right.
So, Hillary, what camera did you have before this?
The camera that I had prior to this was a Nikon 1 J5 mirrorless.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Oh, so there's a big change in image quality. I mean, as far as the kind of pictures you'd be getting. Are you a amateur, professional, semi-pro, enthusiast? How would you classify yourself?
I would say an enthusiast / amateur. And so I've really gotten into photography a lot these past 6 months. And so it was good timing because kind of extended my life on the J5 and was actually looking to upgrade this year. So it was a really weird coincidence.
Life is good sometimes. That's terrific.
Yeah. And what do you like?
Yes.
What do you normally shoot? What kinds of photos, and what do you think you'll expand into now that you have an upgraded gear?
I typically shoot a lot of landscapes and nature. I actually work within walking distance of a national park, which is incredible. So I'll go during lunch a lot and shoot that. And then there's a lot of state forests by us. So a lot of hiking on the weekends and just capturing, those kinds of adventures.
Mm-hmm. And this camera came with a 50 millimeter lens. Is that something you normally shoot with, or do you like to do wide angles, telephoto? What's your choice?
I do like wide angles, but I was excited that it came with the 50 millimeter because I'm really interested to start getting into portraits and that sort of thing. So it was perfect.
That's great. So one last, what's your favorite photography podcast? Just curious. How's that, a cheap shot, huh?
Yeah, that's great. Don't answer that, okay?
That's okay.
It's yours. It is yours because...
Well, have you had a chance to go back to any of our older shows? And if so, which ones appealed to you? Just curious.
Well, I just listened to your most recent one, which I found fantastic, which was about the landscape photography. So I really enjoyed that and the technology. But then the one that really caught my eye was about the photographer making a difference.
Can a photographer make a difference? Sure.
Yeah.
Allison Wright. Yeah, she's wonderful. Okay.
All right.
That's really it. Is there anything else you wanted to mention or throw in? Feel free.
Oh, I just wanted to say thank you again for, the camera and lens and for letting me share a little bit about myself today.
It's our pleasure.
It's our pleasure. And listen, if you're ever in town, give us a holler and we'll give you the $5 tour of the whole facility.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
All right.
All right, Hillary. Thank you so much.
Hillary, thank you so much, and congratulations again. And joining us now is Tim Couch of Austin, Texas, and Tim is the grand prize winner of the Canon EOS 5D Mark IV with a 50 millimeter 1.8 lens. Congrats, Tim.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
How'd you find out you were the winner?
I got off work and came home and I got an email. Email from Twitter that I won through Twitter, and it was awesome. I couldn't believe it.
Can you demonstrate the little dance you did when you found out you won the camera? I know it's.
I was, my face was beet red. I was so excited. I had the best day at work the next day.
That's very cool. Are you? So tell us about the kind of photography you do. Are you a professional, enthusiast, amateur? Where would you place yourself?
I would place myself kind of as a semi-pro.
Okay.
I've done professional photography. Come out of retirement. Once coming out of retirement, I was working for Varla magazine under Rachel Varla, which was an awesome dream come true, doing little sports photography, a lot of concert photography, a lot of reviews and write-ups and things like that. It was tons of fun. Recently, I've also been doing real estate and vacation rental property photography.
Cool. You're earning $1 with your camera. That's good stuff.
Yeah.
Are you a Canon shooter, by the way? Just curious.
Yeah. I actually collect Canon cameras. I've got all the way back from Pellix's all the way up to my current use of a 7D, and now I got the 5D Mark IV to put into it as well for my collection.
Ooh.
Well, you have too many cameras. You gotta send that back. Man.
You have a Pellix. Yeah, the
big Canon.
Pelix too. I'm impressed by that. That's for those who don't know. The Pelix was a Canon film camera that had a fixed mirror, and the image went right through. It was a semi-transparent mirror. So rather than waste time having the mirror going up and down, the light went right through it, and you were able to get 10 frames a second out of it. It was considered their sports camera, but you lost about 2 stops of light looking through the mirror or something like that. But that's pretty cool.
It's an awesome camera. I love using it.
That's great. That's great.
Cool. All right. So you think you're going to be up in your game a little bit now that you have this? You're going to work more, or is it just going to kind of go into the collection with the rest?
No, I'm actually building a magazine, a webzine with my wife and some friends of mine. It's going to be called Teardrop Magazine.
Okay.
We've already photographed a boxing event 2 weeks ago for a charity boxing event from True South Charity, which is to help out-of-work tattoo artists get medical relief funding. It's called Tattooed Gloves.
Okay.
Where it's a tattoo artist versus a tattoo artist boxing for charity.
That's great.
Wow.
So we did that.
That's very cool.
I can honestly say that's the first time I've ever heard of such a thing.
Yeah.
I look forward to seeing those photos. Sounds good.
That's
man.
great.
Sounds good.
That's good. Good stuff.
All right. Well, listen, make sure you keep us in touch with that. All right. Stay in touch and let us know how things go with that, and send us some photos.
Yeah, as soon as it gets here, we're gonna do it like a unwrapping video, and I'll send you guys a link to that.
That'd be great. That'd be fantastic. All right, so we're gonna.
And by the way, hey Tim, I'm missing my car keys. Check inside the box when you get it, would you please?
Oh, I definitely will.
All right. Okay.
All right.
Hey Tim, thank you so much. Congratulations again. You are the grand prize winner. That is pretty cool stuff. And again, keep in touch. Let us see some of the pics you've been taking with your camera. All right.
Oh yes.
Okay. Take care. Congratulations.
Thank you, guys. Have a good day.
You
All
too.
right,
Bye-bye.
take care, man.
Anyway, that is a wrap of another show. On behalf of Jason Tables, John Harris, and myself, thank you so much for joining us today.